Thank you. All right. Well, thank everybody for sticking around. And thank Troy, you really set up what I have to say. That was a great presentation. I'm going to talk about millennials as, thank goodness, a big change agent for us. It's going to make a difference in all of our futures. You know, everybody here understands generations. Like, can you see what generation you're from up on the screen? Look at the birth years and identify it. Anybody here from the silent generation? Probably not. Boomers, I see some boomers, right? Xers. And how about a millennial? Is there any millennial left? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, oh, excellent. All right, so I'm going to pick on you guys. All right. Well, I'm going to talk about millennials because millennials are so important to everything. They are the future. And just to make the nomenclature straight, look up on the screen. You see all the different things that millennials are called that I could do in public. And look at the one that you hear the most often is Gen Y. Gen Y and millennials are one of the same, okay? So I'm going to always use the word millennial. I might slip, but just remember Gen Y. And people said, where does Gen Y come from? The only research I could find was this cartoon from a Canadian, which I think captures something at least. Well, what do we hear about millennials, right? Anybody raising some millennials out there? Right. And we hear all kinds of crazy things about them, right? They're addicted to their smartphones. They dropped out of the real tough post-recession job market. They're back at home with their helicopter parents, on and on and on and on and on. Well, I want to share with you just for a few minutes why none of that's true. Well, maybe some of it. But really how great these guys are and how great they are to this conference. I'm going to share with you 2 big points. The first one is millennials really are going to shape the winning communities of the future. And the second point is that Virginia has a chance to be a national model on sustainability if we get more millennials to come to this conference. Virginia can be a national model. All right, so quickly, 25-minute agenda. I'm going to talk about the one biggest trend that everybody should know and talk about because it's a game-changer trend. And then what's happening to cities across the country because of this trend. And then what are these change agents, millennials? What are they all about? And then I'm going to wrap up with 5 imperatives for us here as part of this conference. So the future, the one big game-changing trend, the one thing that I will bet the ranch on is the age shift. All the people that have been born are going to cause this to happen. It's demographic destiny. Remember this from your psychology books and sociology books? This is the population pyramid. Always since the dawn of man, there have been more younger people alive than older people. Well, this is about to change. This is the population pyramid. Men on the left, women on the right. Boomers are the dark colors, and you've heard of boomers as the pig and the python. Well, let's look at what's happening. Go back in time. Now we're at the 80s, 1990s, 2000. Let's go out into the future a little bit. Wow, that population pyramid is becoming a population rectangle right before our eyes. This is a fait accompli. We're getting a lot older. And there are going to be relatively fewer younger people in our society and relatively more older people, right? What state do we joke about where all the seniors go? Florida, 20% senior today. Virginia, about 13% senior today. By 2030, it's going to look like Florida. I'm not making this up. This is demographic destiny. So it changes everything. And I could go on and on about all the industries and categories that are going to shift. But the big one is our workforce. Our workforce is going to shift. It's going to get a lot older. That sweet spot of workers is only going to grow less than 1%. The big part of our workforce is going to be the older workers, 55 plus. Thank goodness I'm 55. I like that idea. But it really is going to have a big, big impact on us. And it's already starting to happen. And I know this because I get hired by cities all over the country to talk to them and talk to their planners about what's going on, because cities want to become hubs, millennial hubs. How do we become a millennial hotspot now? What do we have to do to invest to make this place cool so more and more millennials will come, so we'll get more than our fair share of these younger workers in the future? So then companies will come here, and then we'll be king on the mountain. Well, for 400 years, Virginia's been king on the mountain. I'm not ready to concede that spot. We are going to become a millennial hotspot. There are going to be winners and losers in the future. Winners and losers, states and cities and towns. Already Portland's got a huge start on us. Already Denver is doing well. And we do research in all these villages and ask millennials all across the country, who's hot, who's not, where are you going, and why. Another hot spot, Austin, Texas, right? My daughter just went down there for the weekend. I said, take pictures. Tell me what you're doing. Explain it to me. And then Nashville. Any of you guys go with the chamber? About 4 weeks ago, we went to Nashville. Fantastic. There are cranes all over the skylines in Nashville. It is a booming town, and it's a booming millennial city. In fact, Nashville and Austin, the two highest scores of any city with millennials in terms of a net promoter score. They are like waving the flag, come to these two cities. In RVA, we're holding our own. We're pretty hot here. And I think Norfolk and Roanoke and certainly Arlington. But I don't want everybody to misunderstand me. It's not just the big cities, it's activity centers. It's activity centers. Even in some of those bigger cities, it's hot places where millennials feel really welcome and at home. So what do millennials want? How do we get into their heads? Well, you heard a little bit a few minutes ago kind of about all generations, but with millennials, we've studied millennials. We help people like NASA and Google try to figure out how do we get these people in our workforce to work with the older folks. So I'm going to share with you just a quick highlights on what we've learned. When you study generations, the defining events in your wonder years, when you're age 5 to 15, when you're wide-eyed and so impressionable, those events conspire to shape and mold you as an age cohort, as a generation. And so completely different series of events now than there were back in the 30s, shaping silent generations as that cohort. And so understanding the defining events and how that leads to generational values, and then ultimately to an archetype. What is the generation really about? In 3 words or less. Now, I'm not here to say every single person can be defined by 3 words, but this is a new lens just to help you understand characteristics of an important segment. So let's think about the defining events when millennials were coming of age. Now, 40 million of the 80 million are already cooked and they're out in society. They're 18 and older. Another 40 million are still in the oven. They're still in middle school and high school. But the defining events, think about all the things that were going on, and we're watching it now. We're all students of history and pop culture and what's going on in our society. You think about all these things going on, and a lot of them are horrific, right? A lot of them are sort of, wow, could it get any worse, right? Because the Russians have announced that deal at a more convenient time this morning. So we think about all this stuff, and as we study generations, we go, why isn't this generation a little more cynical, a little more jaded, kind of more like the Gen Xers that don't really trust the man? And as we really peel back the onion, what we see with this generation are there 2 forces that are internal forces that have had more influence than the external historic forces that have traditionally shaped generations. And so when we look internally, those 2 are how we've raised these guys and how these guys are wired, how their DNA is wired. So how they were raised. Let's get into this quickly. When we think about how millennials are raised, you think about all those things that are defining events. One is this over-involved parenting. And we joke about it, right? We're helicopter parents. Have you all heard that phrase? Helicopter parent. We're involved in every aspect of their lives, overscheduling them, talking to them constantly, telling them they're going to be really superstars. So consequently, some of the values that were shaped for millennials, they're really achievement-oriented. And so when I think about that archetype, I put ambition as one of those words. I think millennials are ambitious. 67% of millennials were born to boomers, us change agents, saying, we're going to do it right. Remember getting the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting? Right? And thinking, we're going to redefine what it's like to be a parent. We're going to do this right. And so as soon as they were born, we put cameras on their cribs. We're going to watch every minute of their lives and record it. And then what are we going to do? We're going to tell them, you're special. And we just did that over and over and over again. Oh, you're so special, right? I did it. I'm not picking on you. Everybody did it. It's part of our culture. Now our kids are in college, and what are we doing? 82% of millennials said they talked to their parents yesterday. Talked, because texting and using the telephone. We're constantly hovering over them, making sure they got the right classes, making sure they get to class on time, making sure they get their papers done. I'm talking about college kids, right? I see it going on. So we've raised all-stars. In their minds, they think they can do anything. And maybe they're not ready for prime time, but they certainly feel they are. And then another thing that we've done, and this is a good part of the helicopter parenting, is, our school systems have said, you don't get your report card until you've done some civic duty, until you've done some volunteer hours. We didn't have that when I was 18. We didn't have that mandatory volunteer time. But it's really built in them this sense of civic pride and purposefulness. They feel like they really are being groomed to do something better. I mean, that you talk to them. they look out and they see, boy, we need to change the world. All right, the other internal factor is how they're wired, how they're wired. And this is a pretty obvious one once I finally figured it out. But the ubiquitousness of technology, and we didn't have this growing up when I'm looking at the older generations, but the millennials were born with technology in their hand. And you look around restaurants and see kids that are 2 years old playing with pads, right? Tablets. But millennials were in constant contact with their peers. I had to pry the phone out of my kids' hands when they were going to sleep at night, right? And so they become codependent. And I know that's a horribly loaded word, but let me explain. Codependent in terms of a new sense of self. They are wired to be a collective. And it took me a fishing trip to figure this out. I love fishing, and right now it's hot on the James River. The shad are running right at this time. And every year they run at this time. So if you want to catch fish, you go where the fish are. And I went there catching fish with my daughter, Becker, woke her up one morning, said, you're skipping school. And we went to catch shad. And man, right there, bang, caught a fish. Watch, bang, 2 fish in the boat. Got to throw them back, but it was hot immediately. And then Rebecca said, Dad, take a picture of me. She gave me her phone. I took a picture of her, and she sat down and just played with her phone the next 2 hours. And I caught 90 fish. I'm not making this up. Best fishing day ever. I'm taking her home, and I said, Beck, why'd you stop fishing? You know, this was really cool. She goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you caught 2 fish? I caught 90. She goes, you don't get it. I was fishing with 90 of my friends. And I went, oh my God, I got it now. As a boomer, I live experiences. I'm not about to share my experience with anybody. I'm doing it right now. It was awesome. I'll share it later. But millennials, because they're hyper-wired, they share their experience. They can't have an experience unless they're sharing it. That's the deal. So that's why I say they're codependent on each other. What we've done in our parenting style and technology combined, we've created a new sense of self. It's the collective self. The collective self. Time magazine had a cool cover story all about the me, me, me generation. Great article, 2 things wrong with it. They didn't call us, and the title. Title was wrong. It's not the me, me, me generation. It's the we generation. I'm going to say this for shock value, but we raised socialists. We raised people that said, hey, I'm going to go through this with everybody here. They didn't hear, you're special, you're special. What they heard was, you're special, and you're special, and you're special. We're all special. No one is better. What a marvelous thing we did by accident, right? And so now what's happening in the workforce, some research we did among people in the workforce, and millennials are leading the way saying, I want my company to have a shared purpose, to do something important, a social cause. They have a new expression of community. It's hyper-community. Hyper-community. We built the suburbs and got lost in the cul-de-sacs. They're building and rebuilding the urban areas and bringing everybody out. 88% of them said, I want to live in an urban area. Not necessarily downtown, like I said, activity centers. But it's a new sense of a shared place. All these micro apartments are the rage across America, right? These tiny little places that you can rent. Because what's really important are the big public areas where you can have your shared space. And this is the Denver train station. And on a Denver trip, I went with the chamber, and I went inside and went, oh my God, it's like a fraternity house. It's like all the things you want to do. And more apartments are getting built this way. More and more sort of villages where you can just hang. They're also changing the way we view work. So we did a big study called the YRVA study here in Richmond a couple of years ago, a millennial study. We were asking millennials, well, where do you want to get jobs? These were kids in college at VCU and at U of R. We said, you know, how about all those big employers, Capital One and VCU Health Systems, all the huge employers. And you know, certainly many people go on to work for those fine places. But what we heard from the millennials was, nah, I don't really want to aspire to work for one of those big companies. I want to work for Blanchard's Coffee, Nectar Shades, Richmond Thread Lab, Shockoe Denim. Collectively, all these people, these 5 firms, have maybe 100 jobs, right? But that's not the point. What they wanted and what they were saying to us is, I want to go to a place where I can make a difference. As boomers, our first job or a couple of jobs was about making a career, and we're still on that journey. And to some degree, Xers are. But these guys, millennials, are saying, no, I want to make a difference. My job's about making a difference. I want to work at a place where those values of social change are shared. And they're bringing in a new kind of economy. It's the shared economy. Ownership is shared. We've all heard that millennials are less car-centric, right? We've heard this over and over again, and it's really true. They're not getting their driver's license like we did as older folks, as boomers, even as Xers. And what we're seeing is they're not even buying new cars, right? And so all the big car companies know this. They're figuring out, what kind of business are we in, right? Maybe we're into more fleet sales and helping cities grow than we are in individual car sales. Well, when you do focus groups and one-on-one interviews with millennials and you really get inside their heads and said, what's going on here? It's not about anti-car. It's about a new social order. It's about everything a non-car life represents. My son graduated from VCU on budget, on time, right? Almost had a 4.0. And I said, son, I'm giving you a car. And he goes, Dad, I just want a bike and a new camera. I said, I knew you were my son. That's so smart of you. Yes, that's what you're going to get, right? Because he can get everywhere he wants in the fan his whole life. He's got it figured out. Sharing bikes, the rage in all the big cities, right? Sharing cars everywhere. And now Uber everywhere. Why do you need a car anymore? And now you can share your apartment. My other son went away for the weekend and he said, Dad, I'm out of town for the weekend. I said, great, I'll come by and take care of your pet. He goes, no, don't worry about it. The guest is going to do that. Oh, you're having guests while you're leaving? Oh, no, I just put my apartment up on Airbnb. I'm going to make $100 and I have no idea who it is. I went, I'm definitely not coming over. But anyway, every little thing you see these guys involved in, it's more about this community. Food trucks are the rage, right? Sharing is caring. That's kind of their new expression. So they're the new force of sustainability. They are the new agents of change. This is a great study done in 1993 where 66% said they would switch brands if they thought the company was associated with a good cause, right? No, the price kind of being the same, they would switch brands. And now, or 2013, it was 89%. But if you look back in 1993, there were no millennials in the study, right? Millennials are coming and they're washing over us and they're going to change things. Coke does tons of research. They've got chapters on their website all about their sustainability initiatives. Just go check out any major brand and you'll see. Tom Shoes, right? The poster child of what I'm talking about. They're in business to change the world. Yeah, they sell shoes, but that's not what their credo is. Their purpose statement is all about changing lives. Buy a pair of shoes and we'll put a pair of glasses or shoes, or we'll help save water in some village. We'll do all these things. Well, if you don't believe me about all this good cause stuff and that millennials are going to be the big change agents, I got you on this next one. Because they got to be. Because if you look at the economy and you look at the win that we had in air sales as boomers, they didn't have that. And so they're getting out of school with $23,000 debt, $1 trillion nationally, bigger than credit cards, bigger than car loans, $1 trillion. So it used to be the youngest generation compared to the oldest generation, there was a 10-fold difference in wealth. And now it's 47 times, right? These guys aren't getting a head start. So God bless the sustainability. So what do we have to do as Virginia's Sustainability Conference? I'll leave you with 5 quick things. Number 1, understand millennials' mindsets. I was thrilled I got asked to speak for 20 minutes. I could speak for 2 hours on this. But understand, it's not how many recycle bins they're using. That's the old metrics. You got to understand the new metrics, which is websites like how good is the food? And how far is it from the table? Generations Matter is the name of my company, and I do a ton of research in this. Go to this website. It's tons of free stuff you can download all about the different generations. Number 2, partner with millennials. Even at work, even as your employees. The good they want to see in the world is possible if they partner with the right people. That's what they think. But that right people is also if they partner with the right company. And there are a lot of folks that do research on this. Tom Shoes is one of them. They have a whole idea of the thoughtful partnership, lining up partners, looking at their customer as a partner in sustainability. And boy, is it working. Number 3, invest in placemaking. And this is really for Virginia. We're seeing it sweep across the country, more and more communities saying, wow, if we build a great community, a great place, people will want to be here, like Portland and Austin and Denver and Richmond. People will want to be here, and then companies will follow. So we'll invest in place. So we've done a ton of research, and we understand that you've got to have the basics in placemaking. You've got to be able to say, we have good jobs, we're safe, blah, blah, blah. but you also got to have all these cultural things going on in terms of placemaking. You also got to be known for creativity and innovation and sustainability and multimodal and all of those things that make up kind of the new place. So more transit has to happen, more bike trails, more multimodal hubs, more innovative mobility options. And kudos to Virginia for figuring out, yes, Uber can be here and Lyft. 75% of millennials think they're not going to need a car in the future, right? That they're not going to require one. Wow, a car-light life. It's kind of like a lot of my boomer friends right now. This may have a big promise for us. And it gets to energy. The millennials are the guys that are saying, no, we need to have more alternatives. We need to be more creative. We need to be more innovative. So they really are the choir for this entire conference. We have to advance an entrepreneurial culture here. Most of the jobs in America come out of small business. And so we've got to link small business in this conference and this whole effort together, that this is really about being entrepreneurial here in Virginia. All the incubators that get going, you might say, oh my gosh, but they just don't really generate all of these new companies. That's not the point. The point is they generate this attitude, they generate this culture. And so cities and townies and towns need to be putting their arms around their universities and doing this kind of work to say we love innovation and entrepreneurial abilities. Richmond, we're on like their 21st entrepreneurial incubator right now. And I think other markets in Virginia are doing just as well. My last point is where I started. We've got to make this a millennial conference, right? And again, thank you guys for being here at the 11th hour and staying. I really appreciate it personally. And I'm sure there were a couple more millennials here when we kicked off, right? But what I would like us to do is understand that 29% of our workforce today is millennial. We should have 1 out of 3 conference attendees as millennial. I don't know, what is it, $150? We got to all pledge to bring a millennial to the next year's conference. Because where we're headed is Millennialville. In 10 short years, 44% of our workforce is going to be millennial. So we can't do anything in terms of saying it's going to happen automatically. We have to be intentional. You have to go back tomorrow to your workplace, look around, and see the enterprising young millennial and say, if you're here next year, you're going with me. And I'll be the first one to say, I'll put $150 up to bring a millennial. Get me back to speak. Thank you very much.